This is a Lotus 79. This car pioneered the most revolutionary technological advancement in F1 history. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at how this car came to be, after which we'll be getting ourselves behind the wheel to see what it feels like to drive a ground effect machine. It all started with a man by the name of Colin Chapman. This engineer, founder of the Lotus F1 team, was looking for an advantage on the competition. With the limited resources that he's and other British manufacturers disposed of, developing engines wasn't a possibility. So he turned to aerodynamics to solve his needs. It began in the mid-60s. Chapman's idea was to take over principles from aviation and turn them upside down to generate downforce and grip for his cars. It started with wings being added to different parts of the visible body of the car. Lotus dominated the sport for years and became a true force of the field thanks to its innovative approach on wing design. In the later 70s, however, the team lost traction. The Lotus 77 proved to be vastly less successful than prior models coming from Chapman's team. Lotus needed to find a new idea to assert its dominance once again. That's when Chapman's interest would shift from controlling the airflow above the car to the underside of the car and a principle that we now know as ground effect. The idea behind ground effect was to create a tunnel underneath the car that would generate a low pressure zone to suck the car to the ground. To achieve this, the underbody of the car would be shaped like a wing, with part of the underside being closer to the ground to create a zone in which the air would accelerate and thus create a low pressure zone, sucking the body of the car to the ground. This effect would not only add a great amount of downforce to the car, but it would do so with a fraction of the drag that would normally be added with the use of a wing. The idea was not new. The first race car to use ground effect appeared as early as 1970 in a racing series known as Can-Am. Chaparral's 2Js, on top of using the space below the car to generate downforce, used fans to accentuate this effect. Something that would later be used in Formula 1 by Brabham as well. While this effect worked on tin-top cars, at the time it was believed the underside of Formula cars would be insufficient to generate any significant amount of suction. On top of that, the Chaparral used a fan to create the suction effect, and the idea to use skirts to seal off the floor hadn't been discovered yet. In fact, the discovery by Lotus almost happened by accident. Chapman had financed Sean Buckley's study at the University of California to develop the underbody of a car for aerodynamical gains. Using different models through the wind tunnel, Buckley was hard at work trying to understand how to optimize the floor. The scale models used for the wind tunnel test were in fact put under so much stress that the sides started to droop a little. This resulted in an instant gain in downforce, and the rolling band used in the wind tunnel even got lifted up a little bit. This happy accident immediately got recognized as a great breakthrough, and it would be fitted onto an actual car soon after. The Lotus 78 became the first ground effect car in F1. At first, the car proved solid, running about as well as the best midfield cars. Reliability though still played a big role, which is why Lotus didn't win the championship straight away. Over the course of the 77 season, Lotus would use the car as a driving laboratory to perfect its design, and the following season, a legend was born. The Lotus 79 dominated as every other team on the paddock scrambled to make their own version of a ground effect car. Some did so very convincingly and soon after Lotus's own introduction. See, the one big weakness that allowed this was the fact that Lotus's chassis was not one of the stronger ones on the field. And as you can imagine, having a strong chassis is definitely a big bonus when it comes to running a ground effect car. Still, Lotus managed to win the Constructors and Drivers' Championship in '78 amongst a field of talented competitors. In red, we had the pair of Carlos Reutemann and Gilles Villeneuve. Alan Jones drove for Williams, Niki Lauda represented Brabham, Hunt of course drove for McLaren, and Lotus finally had the talented Mario Andretti paired with the late Ronnie Peterson that would tragically lose his life at the end of that season. Track-wise, we saw a big shift at the end of the 70s in the way circuits looked. Jackie Stewart, amongst others, pushed for more safety in the sport, so tracks got fitted with Armco barriers all around. Chicanes were also added in places and some venues got scrapped altogether. Now don't get me wrong, these changes didn't happen overnight, and it would often still take tragic events for organizers to understand a situation was more dangerous than it looked. Add to this the fact that these new ground effect cars would create unprecedented speed in the corners, and you will quickly realize that even with all of these new measures, the drivers couldn't be saved in case of an accident at the wrong spot. But at least, from now onwards, the governing body would look for ways to improve safety, as opposed to the general mentality that existed before of having drivers accept the risks involved. And with that said, we're about to start our car at the Argentinian Grand Prix of '78 to see what it must have been like to race with ground effect. Here we are then on the grid in Buenos Aires, getting ready to start here at the Argentinian Grand Prix of 1978 in our beautiful Lotus car amongst a field of other cars. We're going to try and gain a couple of positions here of the start. We started all the way at the back, even though normally this car that we're driving should have qualified all the way in pole, just so I can show you this beautiful grid of cars, very colorful grid that we had in 1978 with some amazing cars, and we're gonna have to be a little bit careful here with the eye coming through the first set of corners. Of course, ground effect gives the great byproduct that you're losing very little downforce, and in real life they would also make use of that, driving very close to each other even at the start of the race. And so we are actually using that to full effect as well. Now these cars, they do have a front wing. Later in the later years of ground effect, they would let go of that front wing, and so the fact that we have a front wing does mean that we are losing a little bit of downforce because of the dirty air that the cars in front are creating, but it's very minimal, certainly when you compare it to modern day Formula type cars. Coming into this first kind of a twisty section after going flat out for a very long time here in Argentina. I actually really like this track. First time checking out this track, like is often the case in these videos. It's becoming a recurring theme that I'm choosing the most unusual track of the season, or one that is lesser known nowadays to take the cars around. And I think this car has this track actually has a lot of potential to show off these ground effect cars, as it has some slower section like the one that you just saw, and in very fast sectors where you can almost go flat out in these cars. Mario Andretti actually said that these cars were like painted on the tarmac. Well, he said that about the previous version of this car, actually the Lotus 78, my bad. It's always difficult with these cars. The 1978 car was called the Lotus 79, and the 1977 car was called the Lotus 78. But yeah, he said that about the previous car, and it says a lot about these cars. If even a Formula 1 driver that was used to very high downforce cars in the 70s talks about these cars like they are painted on the pavement. These cars, they had so much downforce in the fast stuff, and you can really feel it with this mod. That's why I've chosen to do this review in Assetto Corsa, even though rFactor 2 has more diversified fields of models of the ground effect cars, certainly from the early 80s, some great mods there. But I feel like this mod by RSS recreates the feel of driving a ground effect car so damn well, or at least it gives me the illusion of it. It could be placebo, of course. I don't know how mods are made and how they made this mod, if it's realistic at all in the physics department, but to me personally it recreates the effect pretty damn well. I don't know how they did it. The fast stuff, you feel like you have all the downforce in the world. It gives you so much confidence to drive this car, and in the slow stuff it actually brings down quite a bit. You have to be a little bit careful, and you will see it as we're coming through this twisty sector here. I'm having to do a lot more work to keep this car going in the direction that I want it to go to, and be a little bit careful as well, because it's so easy to lose the back end in this slower stuff where you have a lot less downforce. So no idea how they did it. I am not a modder, but if you want to test out this car, it often goes on sale on their website, so I'd definitely say it's worth adding to your collection, because it's a completely different driving feel to other cars of the 70s, to even the cars that we used in the 80s as well, as I missed the gear completely there. So yeah, we've tried the 80s cars, and actually it's currently on sale while I'm making this video. Although these videos, they do take quite a long time to make, so by the time that it comes out, it could be that the sales are over. So if you want to make sure you never miss any of my uploads, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes, because it takes a long time, and sometimes the YouTube algorithm doesn't want to show you channels when videos are quite sparsely made. But anyways, let's talk more about this car. As you can see, we're going about almost 250 kilometers an hour on this corner, and you can actually use a bit of the runoff here. They did so in real life as well, so I'm doing that as well. And something that the sim doesn't simulate and makes it very easy to drive these cars is the fact that you don't have any effect of the G-forces that real-life drivers actually had, and it's one of the reasons why they would step away from ground effect in later years and actually ban ground effect completely. These cars, they went so fast in the corners, drivers even eventually got dizzy when the turbo era came around the corner, and cars went even faster in the corners. They got confused about where to go, and some drivers even fainted on the podium's celebration after the race because of how tiring these cars were. That is something that we do not have to suffer through in sim racing, and you don't feel it at all. And that's why these cars are so easy to drive as sim races. But you gotta remember that these cars were actually very, very tough on the body of real life drivers. And so because of the excessive speeds, it created a lot of very high speed incidents. Some drivers they got very, very injured. Others, well, they lost their lives, unfortunately, and that is how it's often the case in F1, and what was the downfall of ground effect in the end. But some amazing cars to check out. I do definitely recommend them, even if you are a beginner sim racer. These cars, they are very forgiving. Just gotta remember to watch out in the slower stuff. So yeah, that was the ground effect era. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a very brief look at ground effect. There is so much to say about this. Like I said, it's a real revolution of aerodynamics, and so there are so many different stories about them. Make sure to go and expand your knowledge if this is something that interested you. Subscribe to the channel for more sim racing stories, and I'll see you space racers in the next one. Goodbye.